Okay, fish tankers, let's just cut through all the nonsense and just say it right there out in the open. I have done this for a while now. The proof is in the pudding, it works. Deep dirted substrates are the best way to keep an aquarium. In fact, it's the only way to long-term success in the aquarium hobby, and if you don't do it, it is tantamount to animal abuse. I don't think so. Why don't I think so? Stick around. Okay, fish keepers, what I'm talking about is that every now and then there's a big fight that kicks off on YouTube among the fish tubers, and everybody making videos this way and that way, contradicting what the other one says, saying this is dangerous, it can't be done this way, that one is only in it for the money, and it goes on and on and on, and then it dies away. And here am I adding my 2 cents. I wanted to wait for it to die down a bit. This time it started, I think, with Father Fish, who put out a video where he had a thumbnail that said something about water changes, don't do water changes, or you don't need water changes, or whatever it was related to water changes, and everybody kicked off. And a while before that, we had Corey McElroy from Aquarium Co-op saying on a live stream that he is not interested in talking about anoxic filtration, and that kicked it off with followers of Kevin Novak and Father Fish weighed in, and it was also a big furor. So why does this happen? Is it perhaps a kind of a snobbery that you think you are the one with the best knowledge? I remember there was a time when the marine fish keepers, or more specifically the reef keepers, they were kind of the jocks of the fish keeping world. That's the way to keep fish, and if you keep marine fish and invertebrates, then you really are a level above other fish keepers. There are a lot more technical stuff to that side of our hobby, but I'm not sure if that is what it is. And I think people understand now there's aspects to a freshwater hobby that's also very challenging. Is it perhaps professional jealousy? What kicks off these fights? And I think clickbait has got a lot to do with it. You'll notice the thumbnail here. I'm also not 100% innocent, but I think what happens often is that these YouTubers, the long-time YouTubers, they're just very, very passionate about what they do and what works for them and what they've developed over years. Because you've got several of them, and the most well-known of them is probably Corey McElroy there on Aquarium Co-op, and he is more the guy that advocates the mainstream style of fish keeping that you will find when you go to your better local aquarium stores. And that's basically, you have planted community tanks and you use a normal layer of substrate, be it sand or gravel with root tabs stuck into it, sponge filter, and low-tech, easier to grow plants. That would be more of an Aquarium Co-op style. That's sort of a mainstream style. And then you have Father Fish, whom I drew a lot of inspiration from for my tanks that I'm doing here, most of them anyway. And he is the deep substrate kind of guy, the low maintenance, low tech, deep substrate, deep dirted substrate, creating an ecosystem kind of guy. And then there's a Dr. Kevin Novak. He is the plenum guy. Plenum basically is, to my understanding, a very slow-moving under gravel filter with sort of a special substrate on it, and also it ties in with bags of kitty litter and some iron substance into it to get that anoxic filtration going. Then you've got your aquascapers like George Farmer, and these guys are more on the high-tech planted side of a hobby. And you get your monster fish keepers as well. You get your cichlid guys like Cichlid Bros and Ben Outshot. And what I'm trying to say is there's a very wide range in this hobby. Now, most of my tanks, not all of them, have these deep dirted substrates. The longest one has been with it for 2 years now. It's a way of doing a low-tech planted aquarium. As I've said, I drew from Father Fish and a bit of Diana Wallstead as well. But you can see mine aren't exactly like theirs. There's a little bit more filtration. And so I've tweaked what works for me. And I know by now what it can do. I've spoken about it many times. It's a very good way to establish an ecosystem that becomes rock solid over time, not immediately always, over time. And it's a very low maintenance way of having a planted aquarium. But it is not the only way of doing it. Sometimes it's just not practical. Let's say, for instance, you have a very small aquarium or a very low aquarium. It's not very high. You know, when that deep substrate isn't always practical. And I know what it can do, but I also know what it can't do. Now, it's not the fastest way out there to grow plants. And if you want one of those thick green carpets of Monte Carlo that looks like a lawn, the low-tech dirted way, that's not going to do it for you. And then if you want to have these lush red plants, the plants of those red pigments, you know, you're not going to do it with my sort of method and Father Fisher's sort of method. That's not going to work. And if you're an aquascaper, and these are guys like George Farmer, they are more about creating an underwater garden, a piece of art. The fish are purely incidental, and then you want to grow a wide variety of plants, and that's when you have to look towards the high-tech way of injecting CO2 in an aquarium, the more high-end lights like the ADA and the Chihiros. And if you're going all that way, along with it becomes a very quite more expensive, very sophisticated aqua soils that I've also used in the past. And if you're going to go all that way, of course, you're going to get a rimless, low iron, super clear aquarium. Now, I've used elements of all that, but I've never done a high-tech tank. That's not my area of expertise. But if you're going to do aquascapes and you're going to go do it for a competition, or you like doing something different every few months, then the low-tech way is maybe not for you. Then go all out and do the high-tech way. There's absolutely nothing wrong with it. If you can afford it, go for it. And then there is also your normal way of fish keeping. You know, I've talked about aquarium co-op, and that's just if you want a tank with fish. It's more about the fish. Now, you may be buying the tank for a kid. You don't want to make a swirl mixture and a mud mixture. You just want to get it done. And for many years, I kept tanks that only had the most realistic plastic plants that I could find. And there were much bigger fish in it than what I have now. I had everything from Oscars to silver dollars to big clown loaches and red tail sharks and rainbow fish. But it was about the fish. I wasn't about creating an ecosystem. I just wanted to keep fish. And in that sort of setup, that is perfectly fine. And this very tank that you're looking at, in the past, it just had normal layer of finish gravel on and Java fern, and that's all I had there, and there was nothing else, and it worked fine. I just like this method because there's a lot less maintenance that I find. So no, if you're going to go and do an aquarium just the usual way, like they would do there at Aquarium, at the Aquarium Co-op channel, you're not going to kill your fish. You just need to know how to cycle a tank, how the nitrogen cycle works. That's the most important thing. Then people also get into the fish that you're keeping. Some people have something against fancy goldfish. You're not allowed to keep fancy goldfish. And then other people can't stand hybrid fish. You know, if you keep blood red parrotfish or polar parrots or anything like that, then that's also not a good idea. That's also passé. And don't even talk about glowfish that's so popular now among the kids. Now, we have to be honest here. A lot of these fish in our aquarium, through selective breeding, they don't resemble the fish that you find in the wild. You're not going to get a koi angel in the Amazon, and you're certainly not going to get fancy guppies in the wild either. They're going to be much drabber with smaller tails. So that's already something that's man-made and that's been interfered with. And I have kept, I've had a red parrot eons ago. It was a very personable fish. and I've also kept fancy goldfish. And I think the main thing with that is, don't go too far with it. As long as the animal can still lead a healthy life, is not in pain or anything, and is not suffering, then it's okay. So I would never advocate for injecting fish with dye. That's an unethical practice. Clearly, I think it has disappeared. I haven't seen it in a long time. And I think, you know, things like these fancy goldfish with a bubble eyes, that's going too far. The closer to normal fat bodied fancy goldfish, they're all right to me. But as long as the animal is not suffering. Because in the end, I don't like these soapbox standing cult-like things. I don't like these. This is my way. It's the only way you can do an aquarium. And if you don't do it like this, you're stupid. Because I learn from everyone. And I even have a 5-gallon tank here where I set up a plenum that I want to try out and see how that method works. But learn from everyone, and the bottom line is, yes, I like these deep dirted substrates in most of my tanks because I think it's a low maintenance, low cost way of having a very nice planted tank, but it takes time and also to establish it, and also you can't grow all these plants that you can grow in a high-tech tank in it. And it's not going to work with certain fish. It's not going to work with big tank busters or African cichlids that will rip the plants apart. So there's different strokes for different folks. And in the end, the paramount thing is that one has to give these animals that we keep in captivity the best life possible. So as long as you can maintain optimum water quality, as long as they have enough space, as long as they have an environment that is conducive to their lives, then do what fits in with your goals in this hobby. So that's it from me. Just thought I'd weigh in on that subject. So please give the channel a thumbs up if you enjoy the content. And if you feel like it, please subscribe. We would greatly appreciate that. And until I see you again, please keep taking good care of those domestic denizens of the deep.